as I was finalizing the notes how perfect it is that this is the chapter that I get to talk on tonight, because I feel like this is so central to my journey and really even just central to what I needed to hear and to be reminded of this season in my Plexus journey. For those of you who are not on my team, my name is McKenna Pruitt. I'm an Emerald Ambassador, and I have been with Plexus now 4 years, I believe, and I've been Emerald 3. So definitely this book have been so good to remind me to looking at my why, to revisit my goals, recommit. And I feel like, especially in this season where it just feels like there's so much newness, so much building, this is the time to actually take action. So for those who don't know me, as Enneagram type is a 9 with a 1 wing, and that type is known as the dream. And I wanted to show you a glimpse of, because dreaming, and it's not even complete, but this is like intense, you guys. This is stuff I have, like Pinterest boards of my dream home, the Christmas store I want to have someday. And I mean, I have spent years adding stuff to the boards, dreaming about it, driving around town to look at what different things I love to see. And it's so good to flesh out your dreams and your goals and to visualize those. But on one hand, and I mean, it's great. This is the first time I've put it on something visible where I can see it daily. I think that's so crucial and so important. But when it comes right down to it, sitting on my phone, adding images to a Pinterest board for an hour at a time, or however long I would do that, that's not getting me any closer to that dream house or to that Christmas store that's my dream someday. So this chapter is such a good reminder. Step 5, making it happen. So once you've fleshed all of this other stuff out, what do you do? And I love, this was so good, where he said that too much time, if you're constantly preparing, constantly organizing and dreaming, all that is a fancy way to procrastinate. And I know that that is very true of my tendencies. Things that I struggle with tend to be slothfulness or procrastination. But I don't think that's just true of my personality type. I think anything big and scary is easy for us to want to put off. And if we're spending a lot of time, not just dreaming, but how many of you are like me, where I'll find a new um, system for coming up with Facebook posts, or I'll find a new uh, planner that is so good, like a passion planner, and I want to fill out my stuff on there, or just a new Instagram strategy. And so I feel like for the past couple years, I've been just hopping from thing to thing, hoping it'll help get me organized. When it comes right down to it, I really just need to start talking to people and and spreading the word about what Plexus is all about. When he was talking about General McClellan and how he said he had overestimated the enemy in his mind, I think a lot of times when we get started, if we're thinking too big and thinking ahead too far, it becomes way too intimidating in our minds of what this goal is. And instead of just breaking it down and taking that first little step, I feel like that is what some of us can tend to do. We sit there and think, oh, I need to print out my entire friends list and organize it alphabetically. And that just seems massive, instead of just picking a name and sending a message. So I love how he talked about the art of the start and the easiest task, and doing that first. I think there are some times that you absolutely have to do the most crucial thing that's at hand. But when we're talking about a journey of achieving a kind of a long-term goal, I think there's a lot of validity to this. And I love how he talked about the actual science behind what happens in your body when you have these small wins first. So I was thinking about this in terms of leaders. And although every person is different, their comfort zone is going to look different, what they want to do when they start trying to grow their business. I was thinking easiest tasks that we can have our new people do. What are some ways we can help them start to to eat this frog, bite, 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 and to get them started in kind of a non-scary way. So I had thought of a few things, but in just terms of our Plexus business, I wondered if any of you had any ideas or suggestions of ways you could give some easy tasks, non-scary tasks to get your person started on the journey. Anyone have any ideas that they want to unmute and share? Anything that works for you or that you've seen other people do? That's a good first step.
I kind of just want to branch off of that a little bit. So we had that call last week with that Melody, I don't know how to say her last name, Hopius, the one that went Emerald in 6 months, right? And so I think all of us were on this call like, oh yes, like she's going to have the magic ticket. Mm-hmm. And no, her magic ticket was she just shared with a lot of freaking people in a short amount of time. You know, like, oh, she's going to have this super simple, duplicatable, like she's got duplication down pat. And it's like, it's not, we make it way more complicated than it needs to be. My biggest takeaway I got away from her was that not sharing is selfish. And I feel like that's something that is super duplicatable when it comes to, back to your question, McKenna, when we've got new people, just simply asking them, what has been the best part of your first week with Plexus? Can they put that into words just with you? Not like, hey, share your best part. Like once they tell it to you, then you can say, you know, that's amazing. I know I have a ton of people that would benefit from that. Can you think of anybody that you'd like to share that with? You know, would you be willing to post that publicly? But just helping them identify how their life has changed in a simple way. Melody talks about that too. Like so many people have fungus that they don't talk about, you know, but when they hear somebody else has it, it's like, oh, so, you know, that is a real thing and other people suffer and this has helped them. So I don't know, just helping people recognize what it is that they're noticing and starting to put it into words.
That's good. Let's see. I think we got somebody that's having some feedback. Trying to see if I can mute on my end. Okay, I think we got it. Okay, so one thing actually that made me think of was for my journey, those of you who don't know, I joined and I only wanted the products and I was not open to sharing at all. I, in fact, was so adamant about not building a business that I was prepared to block Jessica Hepley because I figured she was going to push me into sharing. And so I was going to block her if that happened. And what she did exactly what Ashley talked about, just asking about my first week. When I had a result that I liked, she went into major cheerleader mode and she, you know, basically said, you should be shouting that from the rooftops. This is so exciting. You know, I can't wait for you to help your friends to have similar results. And that was still very out of my comfort zone. So what she actually ended up finding that was in my comfort zone, that was an easy first step for me, was just to write my testimony. I love to write, so that was fine for me to do. And then she did ask if I would share it just with her team, which at that point was not that big. And so I was okay with that. It's like nobody really knows me in there. So it may take some digging to find that thing that doesn't seem so scary for your new person. But I think having this information of getting them those small wins right off the bat, and for ourselves as we're trying to get back into momentum, having those small wins, whether it's just posting more consistently on Facebook or if y'all don't have the Dough app, I'm just telling you right now, or Teamsy or something similar, that is a game changer because for me, that's been the one system that truly has been bearing fruit and has actually helped me stay on target rather than just go down different rabbit holes. And so it's kind of a no excuse. You get 5 names, you send out the message to them or you interact with them. And those are small steps that really fulfill that need for sense of accomplishment, momentum, and all of those things. I'm on my phone, so I'm going to try and keep up with some of the comments as we have them. All right. So I love how he said, don't let the size of the dream be its own demise. I think God wants us to dream big. Like if God put something in you that has been with you for a long time, or something that just is a passion of your heart, I think that's for a purpose. And so if you have this big dream, I know for our family, like we would really love to, we call it reverse tithing. We would love to get to a point where our income is so substantial that we can live on the 10% of it and give away 90% of it. And that's a huge thing to think of, that amount of income. And if I think, okay, that's the end goal, it's so big that it might cause me just to scrap it. But I really think that's something that God put in my heart. And so instead of focusing on the magnitude of the end goal constantly, we do have to break it up into these daily action steps. And I love how he said, you have to schedule it. This is, as my husband went part-time last May, and I was like, oh, this is just suddenly going to open up our schedules and it's going to be so easy. But y'all, life will fill in the gaps. And so if it's not on your calendar, it is probably not going to happen. And just like you would schedule, he talks about a date night or anything else that's important to you, you have to have it on the calendar. And seeing it on there, that is, I love how he says it's going to just reduce that hesitancy that you're going to lean towards wanting to have. So did anybody have any other thoughts on that first part? Impulse. I just wrote down so many good quotable moments from this chapter. We said impulse does not equal greatness. You know how many people have an impulse that, man, I wish things could be different. I wish things could be better. But the greatness comes in the daily consistency and the taking that first step, whatever that looks like. All right. So I love how he also said, here's another quotable: passion drives you, but let reason take the reins. So let passion be the fire in your belly, but your day-to-day actions need to be harnessed by some discipline and by some intentionality. I love how he talked about activation triggers. And man, this is so true. I have one of my habit goals that I've been really trying to instill, and this book has helped so much with that, is I have really wanted to wake up at 5 a.m. for a long time, because I feel like that's the amount of time I need to wake up before my children, be centered and ready myself before they start waking up for the day. And that's hard, you guys, especially if kids aren't sleeping in the night very well. And so I, first of all, realized I needed to find something enjoyable so that I get out of bed. So that's my time. I have my coffee, maybe worship music on while I'm getting ready. But also this activation trigger he talked about, I have all of my stuff set out the night before. I have the coffee ready to just pour it and pop it in the microwave. It's all set out. And that takes the thought out of me having to sit there and think, well, it just gives me less excuses because half of the job is already done. So if you think through, if you're going to plan work time, think through your contingencies. What are some activation triggers that you might need? If you have small children and nap time isn't being as consistent, and you might need somebody to help support you through eliminating that contingency, you might need some childcare help. I was curious if any of you have found any other activation triggers that have helped you with things specific to plexus. I know all of us, he gave some really good examples of the workout clothes being laid out the night before and having somebody else schedule his reservations for their date nights. But specific to plexus, has anybody found any other good activation triggers that have helped you?
I'm someone that works for a reward.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I will reward myself with a TV show, or a glass of wine. And so I'll have that like already picked out. Like when you're done, you get to watch the show, or when you're done, the glass of wine is sitting here, the bottle, like it's ready to go. All you have to do is go through your Dough app. It'll be done in 15 minutes, but it's ready.
Yes. I definitely am big on the rewards too. That's something, and this hasn't been with Plexus as much, but realizing just if I can make my husband watch the show I want to watch, if I get my workouts in, that has really motivated me to get in my workout. So find those things that you can treat yourself to as well. And he talks a little bit more about celebration and the rewards. One of the things, though, he talks about optimizing your triggers. He talked about even the programming your apps for different times of the day. That could be so helpful for Plexus, because you can program only the ones you use for Plexus to be active during your work time, so you don't get as distracted by, notifications from other things, or just protecting your family time so that you can be totally present during your offstage time. And that way you can really focus when it's time for you to get the job done. He says there are 3 ways that you can kind of have your your activation triggers be helpful, and that's elimination, automation, and delegation. So to me, the automation, that's dough. That's super helpful. Just, you don't have to think about it, it pops up for you. And then delegating, depending on what level of the business you're getting to, again, it might be even just if it's 1 or 2 hours a week where you're paying $10 or $20 to have someone help with housework or childcare or stuff with your business, mailing samples. Those are things that you can delegate that aren't essential to your role in your business, that can maximize your time and your effort for things that you do need. And then, that would help with eliminating some of those things as well. So anticipating obstacles. If okay, this is, I'm on my phone tonight. This is one that has popped up in my head since we've been doing this. Anticipating obstacles. My computer has no memory space. So when I think of a good post and I want to download a picture, I can't. Or if I have a file that I want to create for our team page, right now I really can't, because my computer will lock up. It has no memory space. So I know that can be a roadblock. And so I've anticipated that is an obstacle, and I need to get rid of that. I need to either clear off the computer, maybe it's time for a new computer. So definitely a lot of obstacles that are going to happen when we're sitting down to work our business, whether it's our kids or our schedules, whatever. I love every time I hear from Roz Payne. I'm like, if that woman was able to make it to Diamond, she was working like 3 jobs, and she had a son that needed more attention. He was doing therapies. And so just like, if she managed to find the time to do it, I really truly believe anybody can. Experiment until you nail it. If you hit a wall, pivot. I don't know how many of you were thinking of Roz on Friends. I don't know how many of you have seen that pivot, but that's what I was thinking. If you hit a wall and you keep running into the same roadblock, let's find something else that works better. Let's find something else with a different path that works differently. If you keep getting called on, I know I talked to Jessica about this. I try to work at home and I just get interrupted. And she's like, girl, coffee shop. So there are all kinds of ways that we can pivot and change some of those roadblocks or those walls that we're hitting. So chapter 15, he talked about starting to review what your progress has been, what's been working well. And I think the part of this chapter that really spoke to me a lot was where he said, we often try to reach our destination without enough support. Support is one of my 2 top core values. I love to support other people in their goals, make them feel loved. And I realized in my Plexus efforts, I was giving that support out to other people, and I wasn't putting that in place for myself. There's no way that you by yourself can achieve Diamond. There's no way you by yourself can reach these huge, lofty goals that you may have thought of. And so you're going to have to put supports in along the way. I know we joke about this in my family, but we have this Christmas Eve devotional, and it starts off with a devotional. We do a little nativity, and then it's more like a talent show. But the nativity started with like 2 or 3 kids and a baby doll and the little arm cover from the sofa as our little headdress. And then as more and more kids were born into the family, it grew into this huge production to where this past year, I want to say there were like 15 kids up there, ages 10 and under, and they had animal costumes, and there was like a cardboard stable set up around them. It was just this massive production. And in the middle of it, some of the babies were crying, and the cardboard thing toppled over on top of the kids. And we were just dying laughing. And my mom said, I think that we outgrew our infrastructure. And I was just like, at what point did we try to scale it so big that it just crumbled? And I really think you have to put some of those supports in place along the way, even if you think, well, I can't afford a personal assistant yet, or really my business isn't big enough to warrant that personal assistant, or my income isn't enough for the house cleaner. But at some point you have to put those supports in place so that you can scale higher. So did anybody have any thoughts on that? Did any supports come to your mind that you think, man, I need to tweak that, or maybe it's time for me to get some more of that help that I need to scale a little higher?
Well, for me, the biggest thing that pops to mind is resolve, because like, it comes to this when you're working through your Dough app, or when you've got your support systems in place. Like, I have times of the week where somebody is here to help me out with household responsibilities, and my one and only job is to be carrying out certain Plexus tasks. And there are times where I'm in here and I can hear out there that it sounds like pandemonium, or it sounds like something's being handled in a way I wouldn't handle it. Or maybe even it's my husband, and, the meal he's feeding the kids isn't what I planned on them having, or whatever. But it's just like, I have to have the resolve that who I'm delegating it to needs to be the one handling it in that moment. And like, I don't know if this is helpful for everybody, but it helps me to like look at my paychecks and look at the hours I put in and sort of do a little math and go, listen, my Plexus hours are worth this amount of money. And like, that job right there is a $5 an hour job, or, whatever I'm paying so-and-so, whether it's $12 an hour, like that is a $12 an hour job. And it does not need to be done by somebody with $20, $30 an hour skills, or whatever math you do. I don't know. That may not help everybody, but that really helps me.
I like that a lot. I think just knowing that sometimes you have to relinquish that control on the smaller things so that you can achieve that higher purpose is a really good reminder.
And I think along those same lines, like, it can be a little deceiving because we only spent $34 or $39.95 to start a business. I mean, we made back that money, some of us within a day, some within a month, whatever. It was quick. Whereas most businesses, when you start them, I mean, you're lucky if after 5 years you've made back that investment. I mean, that would be like crazy successful. And so, like, we have to think about, we only spent $34.95, but where else do we need to spend money in order to be successful? It's kind of like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And you have to put something in. Sometimes you have to just go out on a limb and say, you know what, I have to do this, and I have to trust that I'm going to see a return on this. I'm going to invest in these prizes for my team, or invest in help at home so that I can work my business harder. And just kind of go for it and trust that that's where we're at. the right investment.
Yes. Yeah, and Carissa said scarcity mindset plays such a role in that. And I really think it plays a role in everything he's talked about in this book. I mean, if you aren't dreaming big, that can definitely be a sign that you're having a scarcity mindset. If you keep hitting the same wall and think, well, that's just the way it is, that's scarcity mindset. So we are resourceful. We have the world at our fingertips of everything that's ever worked for other people, that we can try different things. And again, ultimately, just getting down to the heart and soul of what it is that grows Plexus business is telling people, getting the products in people's hands and getting the opportunity in front of people. I was curious because I've been doing this for 4 years, but just in the last 4 or 5 months have I actually been able to put visible reminders like my dream board, or I have little sticky notes by my bathroom mirror with my more immediate kind of short-term goals, like silver again with duplication for me and my team, and different life goals, financial things. They are very visible where I can see my sapphire goal, all these things. And I just think that's so important that we see it every day, that we scan that list every day, and it keeps it fresh on our mind. It never just slips off and fades into the craziness of life, which we know that it wants to do. So I love how he had this game plan for breaking it down into, so you've got your big goal and you're going to break that down into your next actions. And from that, you're going to come up with your weekly big three, and then you're going to come up with your daily big three. And this is something that I had learned a long time ago, which was, it's called the 6 list. And it's basically the daily big three, but just fleshed out a little more. If you're really focusing intensely on a big goal, it makes sense for 3 of those task lists to focus on your goal. And then of course you'll have time in your day to accomplish other things. But the 6 list that I've done is the most important tasks for the next day, ranked from the most important to the least important. And then if you don't get to the ones on the bottom, you bump those up to the top. But as we're working on these goals, having those daily big three every night before you go to bed, just be thinking about, what do I need to accomplish this week? And what is it that tomorrow, what 3 things can I do to reach that goal? So if our weekly big three coming up is going to be centering on maybe whatever the President's Day special is, what are the tasks we need to do each day for ourselves to accomplish whatever that is, or our team, breaking that into those 3 items. How many of you already do something like that? Really map out and sit and think, okay, this is my top priority for tomorrow for Plexus. Do any of y'all do that daily or just weekly? Was any of that kind of a new thing for y'all to think about?
I do it. I have a monthly, weekly, and daily. I used to get overwhelmed. I had too much to do, so I really read the book, The One Thing, which helped me really break it down. And I have it taped to the wall, and I had to really dissect it. So I have a monthly, I have a weekly, and I do a daily, but I have to be careful that I don't have too much on my plate. So, and then next, for example, you talked about the President's Sale is one for this week, and I have a tour, the Plexus Health and Happiness Tour next Tuesday. I think it's in Houston. So I have my list of people to invite, to identify and invite, and then just this closing out for February. So I just sometimes have too much on my plate, but I do. I go on a daily basis, and it's on the wall and upstairs, downstairs, wherever. So yeah,
that's so good. And Sri and I were just talking about this today, how Carissa is a big advocate of the book Essentialism, and that has really helped me to see that you can go so far every day, but if you're splitting your efforts among too many things, then you're not going to be able to go as far as you would if you focused it all on one thing. And so I love how he says, he's limiting how many goals we're going to have each year. We definitely want them spread through our entire, different aspects of our life, but we're not trying to do everything in this first quarter. We're chopping them up so that we're just focusing on kind of one thing at a time, maybe two things at a time. That's really going to help us get more things done and really get farther along in that track. So definitely the minimalism idea of one focus at a time, I think really comes into play right here, where we're focusing on these big three.
So McKenna, what
Yeah.
I've done is I've divided it by relationship, spiritual, home, plexus. So I'm taking care of the home. I'm trying to be a better wife, a mom, and things. So I've kind of divided like that. So that way I'm doing a little of everything, because I tend to do too much and a few other things get neglected. So I'm trying to divide this into 5 different key areas of my daily life.
Yeah.
So it's still a work in progress.
Yeah. And I've heard a lot of people say before, how do I balance everything? Well, you don't. I saw somebody say once, like, I don't understand these people who are rocking the business and they are, homeschooling their kids and they are fitness bikini competitors, and it's like all the things that they're doing it. Well, somebody asked me, how do you balance all of it? To me, I think I've told people before, I feel like I can focus really well on 2 things at a time. So either plexus and relationships, I can really do well on those. Or if our house needs some attention or it's tax time, I can focus really well on plexus and taxes, or relationships and taxes. So there are going to be seasons where it's more fluid and things go from the front burner to the back burner as different things arise. But I think that's a good thing to keep in mind and just to remember. When I did the 6 list, I would do my big 3 things that day for plexus, and my top 3 things I needed to get done that day for life. So it might be 1 relationship thing, 1 spiritual thing, and 1 house task. And that was about it. 6 tasks in a day is probably about what most of us can get done. Some of us more or less than others, depending on other kids interrupting. But if we're trying to do it all the time, we're only going to get a little bit done in each category. So I've had more success when I just really hone in on, okay, this is a season where the housework is going to have to slide or hire somebody, or this is a season where I'm not going to have as much friend time, or I'm not going to get to spend as much time on, my hour in the morning might not be an entire hour of just listening to sermons. It might be some worship music and then dive into some other tasks. So everything will probably shift and change as our goals come up on the horizon of when we're trying to work on those. I love also how he did, Ashley, with the wine, how he did talk about celebrating at every stage. If you have a daily win, you did your daily 3, celebrate that. That's huge. You're working on your goal, your weekly. For me, with working out, I've had a lot of success if I met my weekly goal. I get to pick the Netflix show. If I do that consistently for a month, then we'll do something a little, maybe a date night or something a little fancier than just picking a show. But think of things like that would really motivate you, if it's going out with friends, or if it is just even a shout out post on Facebook. If you don't have somebody to celebrate you and shout you out, I promise you, if you don't have an active upline, reach out to a sideline. We love celebrating each other. We love celebrating people on our team. And sometimes it's hard. I can't know that you daily did your activity every day unless you tell me. So if you did those things and want to be celebrated, and that would be special to you and motivating to you to have somebody do a shout out on Facebook, let somebody know. Somebody in this group know. We would love to do that for you. I went to jewel training with a bunch of girls that I had never met before, most of them. And it's so fun to see. Some of them don't have super active uplines. And so just random people that we've met along our Plexus journey that will do shout outs for each other on Facebook and celebrate them for that accomplishment if that's motivating to them. So if nobody noticed, don't let that be a cause for you to get discouraged. Tell somebody and we'll celebrate with you for sure. I love how he said that your goal is the what, and that rarely should change. There are times when, yes, that it might have to change, but the strategy is how you get to the goal, and strategy is the main thing that needs to change. And after you've tried different strategies, if you realize that it may not be getting to the point you want it to get to, then it might be time to reassess. But there are so many strategies, like Ashley was saying, we're all expecting that next emerald to have just the magical formula of how they did it. And I think it's true that each of us has our own niche. Each of us has that thing that we're good at that we need to play to our strengths. But if something isn't working for you, we can definitely pivot and shift that into something else. I thought this was interesting because I know we have a lot of high achievers on this call in this group, is that he talked about how high achievers struggle to stop and rejoice. I was talking to Jake, my corporate coach, about how when I ranked it to Sapphire, I'm going to take like an hour to celebrate, and then I'm going to just go right back into pushing for Diamond because I'm super motivated and ready to reach the Diamond rank in the company. And he's like, whoa. I was like, at least take 24 hours to celebrate, because that's a huge accomplishment. And a lot of times I think we get so goal oriented and so task focused that we forget to just sit in the moment and enjoy it, relish in it, and be proud of it. I think our culture really, especially those of us who may have been raised in more conservative Christian backgrounds, I feel like we've been taught not to be proud of our accomplishments sometimes, that we shouldn't be look at what I did, or relying on our own efforts, and to sometimes to enjoy those things. I think people I have seen over the years feel like that's not very humble to enjoy your accomplishments, but that's baloney. If we don't enjoy our accomplishments, then what's the point? God made us to enjoy this life we won't always enjoy it. We won't always have happiness, but he wants us to be fulfilled. And ultimately, I think the goals that are going to be fulfilling are the ones that he's put in our hearts and that are going to glorify him in the long run anyway. And so we certainly should rejoice in those and celebrate as we get closer and closer along the way. So he talked about, I'm going to just briefly kind of go over these last few things and then see if anybody had any comments. Breaking down big goals into manageable steps, activation triggers, and scheduling reviews. And then little unexpected surprises. We're going to go ahead and talk about the two chapters after this. One was just thank yous, and one was very short about the LEAP principle. So we're going to go ahead and just talk about the LEAP principle so we can be done a week early, because we didn't expect those last two chapters to be so short or to tie in so well with this week. So before we talk about the LEAP principle, was there anything that stood out to anyone else? Quotable moments that haven't been mentioned yet, or just anything that popped into your head as you were listening or reading this week? I was looking back through just to make sure I didn't miss anything. I loved how also he said, are you trying to win, or are you just trying not to lose? Like, how many Americans, that's their life. Like, they're just trying not to be bankrupt, or they're just trying to make it and not to thrive. So that was a good reminder to me of when I would sit and just try to organize my desk or try to get a new system, that never did get me up out of the drowning feeling, which I think is so prevalent in our culture today. So how can you get above those things? One of the first calls that I listened to when I was brand new in Plexus was somebody that was super busy, had a full-time job, had kids, and they talked about how, yeah, it's great to be organized and it's great to have a system, but if that's going to take precious time to sit down and come up with a system or organize, you have to just jump in. You have to just say, okay, I'm reaching out to the first 5 people that pop into my head or that the Doe app gave me, and you're just going to have to do it. You're just going to have to start telling people, pulling testimonies off of the ambassador community page that are safe. So there are plenty of actionable steps that are fast and easier than it has to be with all these different systems, all these, the next leader, which they're all so good, but we can just lose so much time in watching the next training or trying to implement the next person's thing, when really, like Ashley said, it at its core is just so simple. So anything else before we jump into the LEAP principle, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, so the longer you wait to get started, the less likely you'll be to LEAP. This week, my husband, who does CrossFit, and he's kind of been training me in our workouts, he got me doing box jumps, which I had never done before. But I've seen so many people who, as they're working on them, they just freeze, and it's scary to jump up on that thing because you think about, what if I bite the dust? And I have laughed at some of my friends, like, why is it so hard to just jump up on the thing? Like, what's the big deal? And then when I found myself doing it, there I was, frozen in front of this little box. And that's what Michael was saying. It's like, the longer you take to just jump up on it, the less your body is going to want you to do it, because the longer you pause, the more you're telling yourself that this is a scary thing. And so you have to just pull the trigger. I love how he said, you should never leave the scene of clarity without taking decisive action. This is something for me, just with mom brain, I've kind of learned along the way. But if a thought pops in my head and I don't schedule it on my calendar then, or at least do some kind of actionable step, a sticky note or something to remind me for later, it's not going to happen. So if it's, the Doe app, again, no, keep mentioning that, and a name pops up and it's a dream teamer and you're scared to reach out to them, well, you can't leave the scene without taking a decisive action on it. Or when you come back, your brain's going to remember, oh, that was a scary thing. So if you're having a moment of clarity of, this is a dream teamer, I need to do something, you have to just do it before you leave the scene. So he gave an acronym with the word LEAP. L, when you have that thought of, oh, I should do this thing, or this is something I should change or implement, to lean into that change with expectancy. So to think, okay, this might be something that would work, or, oh, wow, if I did reach out to this dream teamer, what would happen? That feeling of hope or expectancy or excitement of what good thing could come of that. And then E is you engage it further. You mull it over, you let it kind of simmer and let that unfold in your head. I love how people have said before, like, that girl is going to love driving her Lexus, or, oh, won't that girl just love being on the beach in Hawaii? Let it unfold in your brain a little more. And you may not know right at that moment what action step to take on this idea, but as you let it simmer more in your head, you'll come up with that perfect end, whether it's telling your friend, man, I just really would love to have you on that trip with me, or whether it's just commenting on a Facebook wall post because you need more engagement. The more you think about it, the more that right stuff is going to come to your brain. A is activate, and then you do something when you activate it. Clarity comes in degrees, and you only need enough light for the next step. I love that. I had a dream teamer and their name popped up on the Doe app, and I was like, oh no, I'm not ready for this. But I leaned into it. I was like, okay, but what if they were positive and I engaged it. I was like, okay, so what would be a good way to approach this? I was like, all right, this is a newly married person. And so when I activated, I did something about it. I remembered a cold message I had seen that says something along the lines of, hey, so-and-so, I am reaching out to my friends about their 2019 health and financial goals or resolutions. And then I added to it, I know when we were first married, we had a lot of financial needs, and I would love to show you a video about what I do if you're interested in an extra stream of income. And so when I sent that message, that was the only clarity I had. I didn't know if they were going to say, yes, I'll watch the video, or no, I won't. But that was all the clarity I needed for that moment, was send the message. And then when their response came back, I knew I could trust myself, trust God to give me that next little moment of light, next little moment of clarity to do the next thing, the next response to their response. And then P is for pounce. Do it now. Don't wait. Don't put it off. Waiting kills dreams and intent diminishes. Don't we know that's true? We have such good intentions, such good ideas, and the longer you put it off, not only is your brain going to think, well, it's just something scary, but it just loses its passion. If we don't act on it, our bodies, I love how Lori Harrison talks about this all the time. I think it came from a John Maxwell conference that she went to, and they talked about the things that you don't implement within the first 48 to 72 hours, your brain is going to shred because it realizes, oh, we're not using this info. Let's just get rid of it. And I think that's exactly what happens here with good intentions or passion. If you don't start implementing that pretty quickly, your brain, it realizes that it was not relevant information to your life, or you would have implemented it. So pounce and do it now. Don't wait. So that's pretty much my takeaways from the last couple of chapters of the book. Did anybody else have anything before we turn it over to Amber to close us out?
I have a little something.
Yeah.
In the whole like leap thing and talking about when your dream teamer, pops in your head and then you kind of get scared. I used to sell timeshare in Branson. I was a sales rep, and one of the things we used to say is labeling is disabling. Don't prejudge. Don't prejudge them that they're going to be negative, or that they are, of course, they're going to blow it off. They wouldn't want to do this. And I've been reminding myself of that lately. And so one of the things that I did just to give me more confidence is I went back actually and listened to one of Carissa's calls she did with Tamara on verbiage. And when she was talking about, oh, hey girl, I don't know why I've been so scared to reach out to you, like kind of making it like that. So that's kind of been what I've been doing with the people that pop up that I've been scared of, is just reminding myself labeling is disabling. And I don't want to disable that whole thing. So that's one thing that I really loved. I haven't really talked a lot on these calls because I've been busy on Mondays and I have to sit like quietly in a dark corner to listen. But I really loved chapter, like this last bit. It just kind of made me, I'm a very disorganized, scattered person. And I feel a lot of pressure because like I do a little bit of everything and then nothing ever really gets done all the way.
Mm-hmm.
And this has really made me feel like, okay, I can do 3 things. Like I can write those 3 things down, or I can, make some lists, and I don't know. I'm definitely going to celebrate, I think.
Yes.
That might make me more empowered to do better.
Yes. And to me, there's so many books about goal setting and dreaming big, all of those things. But to me, this last chapter or 2, well, several chapters, step 5 and the LEAP principle, like that to me is what really puts the punch in this system, in this book. And I know this is where Michael Hyatt's success has come from, is in his action steps and how he has learned to start, the art of starting, and to not let a failure make him afraid. It's a lesson. It's a lesson to just learn from. And so ultimately, just taking that step and knowing that you trust yourself enough, you're capable enough of figuring out that next step when it comes. And sometimes all we can see is that taking that first baby step out, or our 3 steps for the day, and that the rest is going to follow right along in line. All right, Amber, I think we are about ready to close this out.
Sorry, you guys haven't seen my face tonight. We had kids were crazy. We had late swim lessons tonight, so like literally just went to sleep. Okay, so my question is, since we're kind of wrapping this up, I want to hear from everybody. What was your biggest takeaway from this book, and something that you plan on implementing? And I know, McKenna, you said something that I do. I'm so bad at this. Like, I kind of dismiss when I hit things. Like when I hit a goal, I dismiss it. Like it's never enough. And I'm an Enneagram 3. And so, like there are some days where I have to listen to the Enneagram 3 song and just remember, like, maybe I have done enough. Maybe it is good enough. Like maybe it is. But before I had heard that song, my counselor said, have you ever watched The Greatest Showman? I was like, yeah, I love that movie. And she's like, you need to listen to the song where she sings about it's never enough. I was like, oh, burn. Yeah, get it. I got it, but that is one thing for me that I'm trying really hard.
Yeah. Because what is there eventually, to me, I feel like there's going to be burnout if you can't just relish in what has already happened.
Yeah.
That is such a good one. And yeah, Michael Hyatt taking his entire staff on a cruise. I'm like, let's dream big and get to that celebration stage.
I know a dentist, actually my dentist, Amanda, you probably know him too from Dardanelle, Dr. George. He takes his whole staff every year to Mexico, all inclusive, pays for their family. They all get to go every year. And he's done it for as long as I've been going there, since I was in high school.
Wow.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is amazing. I know this entire chapter spoke to me a lot, but in addition to that, shifting my concept of goal setting into some being habit-based goals and some being achievement-based goals really, I think, has changed a lot for me, because the habit-based ones I wasn't doing so much, and I think that's helping me with my achievement-based goals to kind of break those into those daily steps.
Yes, I agree so much, McKenna. That was mind-blowing, I guess, for me. I'm a 3 too, and so it's always achievement. And like sometimes I don't even think about the habits that I've put into place, and just go and do it. So that I think is really huge in coaching. I also liked the part of starting with the small things that remind me of like the Dave Ramsey, like the snowball, the debt snowball, like start with that little one and gain the momentum. Because a lot of times I'm told in my job to start with the hardest thing, because then everything from that point on is easier. And it works for me, but I guarantee 90% of my team, that's overwhelming to start with the hardest thing. Mm-hmm. And so I really like that idea of starting with that little tiny step and then just building off that momentum.
Alexis wrote on here on the chat, she said, this book has helped me more with goal setting and helped me learn to make goals more than just a written statement on a piece of paper. Yes. Like, Alexis sent me her goals broken down with her steps in them, and they were just really good, like really good. And so I think it's just so important for us to not just, it's so easy for us to write down a vague statement and just think, okay, yeah, that's it, going for Emerald, that's it. But the steps are huge. Anybody else? Takeaways?
Well, for me, the exercise near the beginning was really helpful, where you're going through your last year and you're processing how you wanted it to go, what parts of it didn't go the way you wanted, what parts of it were wins, and just that he gives you kind of like, he gives you some things to do with that. Because like I felt just like so much of that is unresolved, and it's really, really difficult to go into a new year with actual hope and not cynicism when you're looking back going, this just did not go the way I wanted. It's just like you can't even begin. Like a lot of the book is really practical and really helpful practical stuff, like we have, goal setting and stuff that we haven't really like, oh, I've never tried that before. Like that's a really helpful way to set goals, but like before you even get to the practical, you have to get past the part where you're like, this is a waste of my time,
Right.
I felt like that was like really therapeutic for me to go through that exercise.
I just want to thank you guys for sticking with us till the end. I know we had some people that had some schedule conflicts, and I know some of the folks will watch the recording, but anytime we do a book study, it's just, I think if you actually go through and actually implement it, it says a lot about you. You finished, like you did it. You read a book, and here we are. It's February 18th, and you've finished a whole book. Like, yay you. It's awesome.
All I can say is congratulations.
Caleb's over here rapping, so just ignore him. Just ignore him. Are you talking, Carissa? No.
Hang on. Sorry, no, I was talking to Chris.
Oh. Okay. Well, I will have the recording up. As soon as it goes, I'll upload it. If it's not tonight, it'll be in the morning. And I'll get it to you guys, but I really appreciate you, McKenna, for hopping on tonight and for leading us in this call, and for everybody that's led, and Carissa for asking me to partner with your team to do this. And I think it's been super good. I can't wait to see what you guys accomplish this year.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is a book I've been seeing non-Plexus people talking about that I really wanted to dive into. So thank you for partnering with us too.
It's been good. I've really enjoyed the book for sure. Okay, guys. Well, y'all have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.